talking about math is something that can be really hard for students and really hard for parents to talk to their kids about. So these games are games that your families can play in 5 minutes or less to help prevent the summer slide and strengthen their kindergarten and first grade math skills. Hello, and welcome to Making Number Sense Make Sense, a podcast for elementary teachers, specifically early elementary teachers, looking to really make an impact in the number sense of their students. For these games, all you're going to need is dice and cards, which you can get at the dollar store, and 10 coins or pennies, maybe 20 if you want to stretch your counting, but 10 is really all you need. The first game is called Roll and Build or Pick and Build, and you can use either your cards or your dice for this game. The concept is the same. Your students or your children will pick up a card, and whatever number they get on the card is how many items they need to collect or build. So with your pennies or other thing that you're counting with, if they pick the number 6, then they need to count out 6 pennies. This will help with one-to-one correspondence and practicing the number sequence. The next game is called Who Has More? The other version is Who Has Less. For this game, you're going to just need dice or cards. Again, either one works for this game. So the first player is going to roll their dice or pick up a card, and then the second player rolls their dice or pick up a card depending on which item you're using. And the person who has more is the one who gets the point. You'll continue on until one player has 10 points, and that player is the winner. The other version, Who Has Less, is exactly the same concept. The only difference is instead of getting a point if you have a card with a higher value or if you have more, you'll get the point if you have less. Now, this game in particular is really great to play because often figuring out which number is less, or at the same time, if they're using counting to figure out if the number has more or less, having to count backwards can be trickier. So this is a great one to really help with thinking about the number that comes before, the number that's less. In the future, that will really help them when they're doing subtraction, being able to think backwards. The next game is called Heads or Tails, and this game is all about decomposing numbers or making 10 or different combinations of 10. So for this game, you're going to need those 10 pennies, coins, whichever. And so the way that this game is played is you take your 10 pennies, you shake them and drop them, and then you sort the ones that landed on heads and the ones that landed on tails. And you're going to write down how many landed on heads and how many landed on tails. And then you take your 10 coins, shake again, and drop them. How many landed on heads, how many landed on tails. And the more they do it, the more they'll start to recognize the combinations that make 10. So they might always be getting 6 and 4 or 2 and 8. And then eventually they'll start to just remember that those two numbers together make 10. Now, if making 10 is a little bit of a challenge, counting out 10 is a challenge for your student or your child, then this would be the time to lower the number range. So maybe start with just 5. And then as they get better at counting, become more confident, you can add other coins, which is still a valuable skill to know the number of combinations that make 5, 6, 7, and so on. For the same reason, when they start to get to larger numbers, addition and subtraction, once they know those combinations, it helps them when they're using larger numbers in first grade and beyond. The next game is called I Spy Numbers, and for this one, you're going to need the deck of cards. You're going to put the cards into rows, 5 rows of 5, face up so you can see all of the numbers. And so for this one, the first player might say, I spy a number that is the same as 2 plus 2. And then the other player, the one who's guessing, would have to look for 4 because that's a number that makes 2 plus 2. You could also give different kinds of clues, like I'm looking for a number that's larger than 6, but smaller than 8. And then they'd have to look for 7. You can also really increase and focus on addition or subtraction. So you could say, I'm looking for a number that is the sum of 7 and 1, and then they'd pick the 8. You can really use any kind of clue that works for you, but these kinds of conversations are what's really going to help them develop their number sense when they think about the relationship of numbers to each other. The next two games are two versions of each other, kind of two sides of the same coin, but you don't actually need your coins. For this game, you need the cards. So the first player picks up a card, second player picks up a card, and you write it down. And then the first player picks up another card and adds those two cards together and writes down the sum of the two cards that they picked, and the second player does the same. Then when you pick the third card, you're adding the value of the third card to the sum that you just got. So for example, if player 1 got 2 and 2, then 4 was their sum, and they picked another card, and then that card was 6, they would add 6 to the 4 that they had, and now their new sum is 10. Player 2 would do the same. You keep going that way and adding the value of the card you pick to the value that you just had until one player reaches 100. So this game is called Race to 100. The other version of this game has exactly the same materials, but instead of starting with 0 and adding, you're starting with 100 and subtracting. So in this game, Race to 0, you start with 100, you pick a card, and whatever card you have, you subtract that number from 100. So if I have 100 and I pick an 8, then I'm going to subtract 8 from 100, and I'll be left with 92. And then the other player does the same, and then instead of adding the value of each card that you pick, you will be subtracting, and the first person to get to 0 is the winner. I will have all of the directions for these games listed in a blog post in the show notes, and if you would like even more games that you can play in 5 minutes or less, there is a workbook with over 36 games that cover every single Common Core standard for kindergarten linked in the show notes as well. Let me know which games you're trying. If your kids like them, you can always send me a DM on Instagram that will be linked in the show notes as well.